And good morning. We are live on the Falcons Podcast. It's been a week. I feel like I don't know how to ride a bike anymore. Let me bring in some of our Facebook groups real quick, and we will get started on this Wednesday morning. Kind of feels like a Monday. It's nice when it's not Monday and it's actually Wednesday. Kind of feels like a Monday since this is the first pod of the week for us. So we'll get going here in just 1 second, and we are live. Welcome in, everybody. This is the Falcons Podcast, Wednesday edition. We've been gone for about a week. Had some stuff come up last Wednesday, and then we took Memorial Day off. So it's been a week, and a lot has been going on in Falcons country, Falcons nation, however you want to call it, since we've been gone. OTAs, Kirk Cousins, Michael Penix, all kinds of stuff, a couple transactions here and there. First off, I want to say hello to some folks that have come in here nice and early. We go live every Monday and Wednesday, and once the season gets started, probably once August comes around, we'll go back live on Fridays as well. But for right now, Mondays and Wednesdays. So we want to say hello to some folks that have come in before we even had a chance to go live, like Sherrod Thomas. Good to see you, Sherrod. He says, good morning, fellas. Nick will be here shortly. Nick is dealing with a fussy baby. Not me this time, but actually his own infant. And we'll be here in about 10, 15 minutes or so. And I'll pepper him with some of these same questions, and so can you. Dave Glassman says, welcome back. Thank you, and welcome. Thank you for being here. Silas Draven's here. He says, good morning, Scott and Nick, and everyone in the chat. That's all, y'all. The excitement is building for this season. And that's one of the things I wanted to, I titled the show around was, can Kirk Cousins and the Atlanta Falcons get off to a fast start? There seems to be a lot of excitement around, and a lot of it has to do with Kirk Cousins is looking good. He's looking really healthy out there at OTAs. He's got an early grasp on the offense. We'll get into that here after we say some hellos to everybody. John Harrell, good to see you. Hope you had a good Memorial Day weekend, everybody. And Alan says, good morning, everyone. Beautiful day in South Georgia. It's a beautiful day all over Georgia. It's one of those picture-perfect days. It's one of those days I had in California, about 300 of them a year when I lived in Southern California for about 10 years in my 30s. But you kind of start taking them for granted. It was too nice for too long on a day like this today, mid-80s, just a touch of humidity in the air to keep you warm. And then in the 60s in the evenings, it's just about perfect. And then Roderick's, he's got the afternoon going on over across the pond. This afternoon, Scott and Nick and everyone. Lovely day here, too. We're glad for that. I want to say hello to Edward Brown, who's breaking the ice for us with a super chat. Thank you, sir. He says, still no word on Justin Simmons. Can't believe we haven't upgraded the safety position yet. I'm getting impatient. Edward, with a guy like Justin Simmons, I wouldn't get too impatient yet. He's going to hold on for the very best deal and the very best situation he can get. He's 30, 31 years old, multi-time Pro Bowler. He's a guy like Calais Campbell who has earned that right. He doesn't need to be at OTAs. He probably doesn't want to go to a training camp in June, July if he doesn't have to. Sign. And he's a plug-and-play kind of guy. He's a true professional. You know he's keeping his body right. And if he's talking with somebody and he just doesn't want to sign just yet, he's learning everything he'll need to learn, and he will be a plug-and-play. He could sign 2 weeks before the season starts and he would be a starter. That's just, he's that type of player, and two, as a veteran, he's kind of earned that right. So I've seen some reports say, he's holding out for, a similar to deal to what he had in Denver. I don't think that's the case. I mean, he might be, but I don't think he's going to get $15, $16, $17 million as a free agent. I think he'll be in the 7 to 8 range. And I think the Falcons could afford that if that's what they decided they wanted to do. So he's not in any hurry, and I don't blame him. Enjoy it. Enjoy a summer. It's probably the first summer he's had off in ever. When you're talking about a player of this caliber, I mean, thinking about my son as an athlete, if he were to continue on, he's been playing summer sports since he was 6, so he might be enjoying just a little bit of time off right now. Nicholas, the 5th, little V839 says, good morning, everyone. Right back at you. JB, he's in here as well. Good morning, Falcons fam. Floyd Donnelly says, the QB room looks pretty solid, Nick and Scott. Yes, it does. It does. The idea of going from we don't have a quarterback in Atlanta we've got two we feel pretty good with right now. That is a pleasant change, that's for sure. I think one of the reasons we're talking about, I titled the show, "Can Kirk Cousins and the Falcons get off to a fast start?" When you're watching the OTAs and you're watching the throws, if you're watching Kirk move, you wouldn't know that he was coming off an Achilles injury. That's encouraging, for one. And two, he's coming from a system that's in the same tree of where he was in Minnesota. So Kevin O'Connell came from the Sean McVay tree. Zach Robinson, Atlanta Falcons offensive coordinator, comes from the Sean McVay tree. So that's one of the reasons why they think that when they're talking to Kirk Cousins, you're talking to TJ Yates, the quarterback coach. Kirk Cousins is actually a little ahead of his coach, who was with Arthur Smith last year as a receivers coach. He's actually a little bit ahead of his coach when it comes to learning the offense and feeding off one another. Plus, I think they're about the same age. So Kirk Cousins, I think there wasn't a whole lot of discussion. You don't sign a guy to a $180 million contract, even $100 million guaranteed, if you don't think he's healthy. But it's still good. It's still good to see him out there dropping back, kicking off that back foot and throwing, and knowing it's still just May. We still got all of June, all of July, all of August, and then a week of September. So 3 months and change for that Achilles to really get right for Kirk Cousins. And this is really the first time he's been injured in his career. It was a season ender, but he's not a guy who has had a lot of bumps and bruises and missed a lot of time. He's been about as durable as Matt Ryan was for the Atlanta Falcons. And then talking Michael Penix Jr., the reviews on him are really good too, as well. There's an article up on allfalcons.com that Daniel Flick just posted about the lefty spin. It's different. And he's got quotes from several different players and TJ Yates, who caught his first pass at rookie minicamp. Well, actually missed his first pass at rookie minicamp, and that the lefty is different but adjustable. And I excuse me, I really like the Carlos Washington quote. He says, "As a receiver, my job's simple: see ball, get ball. So it doesn't really matter." I really like that one. But one of the things I want to get into, we can get into it a little bit later with Nick, is, why aren't there more lefty quarterbacks in the NFL? Oh, the spin's different. No, it doesn't have anything to do with it. Why aren't there more lefty quarterbacks in the NFL? Because they're pitchers. That's why. Because if they've got a big arm, they are lefties. They are pitching. Look at the difference in the amount of left-handed pitchers in the major leagues compared to left-handed quarterbacks. They're few and far between in the NFL, because if you're left-handed and can throw, you're on a pitching mound. That's the reason why. And it doesn't have anything to do with, well, it's just, the spin's different, or the right side becomes your blind side, all that. That doesn't have anything to do with that. It really doesn't. It's more about the competition from the diamond. And, I can be a loogie, not anymore, a left-handed one out guy, maybe a left-handed one inning guy, and make $5-6 million a year and be one of, let's see, there's probably almost 400 major league pitchers now. Maybe a quarter of them are lefties these days. There's probably 100 of those guys as opposed to one or two. There's all your left-handed quarterbacks. So when you get them, they are kind of rare in lefties, but it shouldn't be that big of an adjustment. Eric, Greg Elrod, good to see you. Appreciate you being here this morning. Says, "Good morning, guys. Does listening live make for a better day?" In the words of Scott, maybe. I don't like to make assumptions. You know what they say of assumptions. I didn't realize I said that much, but as I hear it, I guess I do. I don't want to make assumptions. I kind of like try and lead the witness, as Nick likes to say. I like to lead the witness and see if I can get him to my point of view. Just listening, I'll tell you one thing for me. Doing this makes my mornings better. I say it's a little bit like working out, where you feel like you have to get up to work out. Sometimes you're just sitting there, you're drinking your coffee, you're having your breakfast. You're like, I just don't feel like being up right now. And then, but once you are up, you feel great. So, Greg, it definitely makes my morning better to do this with y'all in the mornings. One of the things that makes my morning better is seeing Nick Kendall's smiling face. So, Nick, how are you doing, my friend? Good morning.
Doing okay. It's good to be back, taking off a few days here, but Ready to talk some Falcons and ready for June to get here. It's been a dreary May out here in upper left USA, so hopefully we can get a little bit warmer. I'm starting to miss the sun. Been stuck in like a March weather pattern, so summer's coming. I know it is.
Hell, it's gorgeous here in the Southeast. Just gorgeous. Supposed to, mid 80s, and which would kill a Southern Californian, but just perfect. Nice breeze, big poofy cumulus clouds. It's just perfect. So I'm gonna get out and try and walk it off a little bit before the day is over. One of the things we started talking a little bit about was Kirk Cousins looks healthy. He looks like he's going to be, ready to go, good to go. And coming out of a Sean McVay system like he did with Kevin O'Connell, head coach, offensive coordinator with the Minnesota Vikings, he's kind of got a leg up on the offense that Zach Robinson is installing kind of together, because they've said that they're doing some hybrid stuff with some of the running game. This team's built to run some of the running game that Arthur Smith put in. Do you think that Kirk Cousins and the Falcons, despite the fact that, maybe their 4 hardest games are in their first 5, that they can still get off to a pretty fast start this year?
I mean, anything is possible. The fact that you are coming from a similar system with Kirk Cousins going with his best years with Kevin O'Connell, a direct disciple from Sean McVay, it is certainly possible they get off to a fast start. The question for me will be more so the aspects that tend to get off a fast start are the physicality aspects, the athleticism aspects versus the intricate, coordinated parts of the pass game. So really, to me, if it is a fast start, it's at the hands of the offensive line and the running game, kind of easing in Kirk Cousins more so than the pass game and the chemistry that goes with that, even though there is some familiarity with some of the concepts of the offense, maybe different verbiage, but that's okay. But to me, if it is a fast start, I come back to the offensive line and the talent of the running backs you have. Now, we'll see about the defensive front. That's another area which, we'll see. But I think that Bijan Robinson, for sure, that's where my fast start comes from.
Yeah, I like the defensive front. I think you're speaking of edges and the outside of that defensive front, because the front, the interior line looks pretty stout right now with some depth. You mentioned it now, and maybe it was kind of a spoiler, because my next question on this was, do you think the personnel, now there's no Justin Jefferson, okay, that's a pretty big difference. He's arguably the best player in football. I mean, honestly, it wouldn't be, I go back and say, who do you think the best football player of all time is? Jerry Rice and Lawrence Taylor are the first 2 players that come to mind for me. Yeah. Justin Jefferson might be the best damn player in the NFL right now. So
if there's a redraft of the league, we've said it on here a few times. You take away quarterbacks, because if it's quarterbacks, the first 20 picks are going to be quarterbacks. But if you took away quarterbacks, he's probably the first offensive player off the board, and he's definitely in the conversation with some of the elite edge rushers. I mean, you and I are pass rush pilled brained to the max, so there'll probably be some defensive tackle and edge rushers we go before him, but he's pretty darn special for sure. The injuries maybe make a different conversation there, because he's kind of missed some games recently. You're gonna have to pay him here soon as well, but he is phenomenal without a doubt.
But do you think the offensive personnel can help? Do you think how does it compare to Minnesota, in your opinion? As he comes into this system, we know this is a system that's built to succeed. They've put a lot of resources into the offense. It hasn't had some of the success yet, but a couple people have lost their jobs because of that. When you're looking at do you think he's got a better situation, fairly equal, or do you think it was there was maybe more talent in Minnesota?
Well, you know how I feel about one superstar wide receiver is outside of pass rush, probably the most singular difference maker. So I still might take Minnesota just because I'm going with the star power there. It's like having, a bunch of Bs versus the 1A. I'll take, if it's a wide receiver, give me the superstar. But the offensive line in Atlanta is obviously better. That's been an issue for the Vikings for a number of years, especially on the interior. They have one of the best left tackles in football who's an emerging superstar, but we don't have to talk about that. And also the running backs are definitely better with Atlanta compared to Minnesota. Like Drake London, I mean, we haven't seen him with good quarterback play yet, so I'm really excited about the potential there. Kyle Pitts, I mean, If he was healthy, I would take Hawkinson right now just because he's a more all-around tight end, a more prototype. It fits a little bit easier into what this offense is asking. We'll see about Kyle Pitts. It's still just a lot of imagination and projection there, in my opinion. But that is still all world potential. So it's pretty close. I'll probably lean the Vikings. The other one is kind of Kevin O'Connell. We have seen it where with oh gosh, names escape me right now all of a sudden for the offensive coordinator. For the Falcons, it's all in theory and practice for their offensive coordinator.
Yeah, it was Zach Robinson.
Zach Robinson. There we go.
Yeah, first time play caller. That's you go in assuming that they can be at least average or better, but that's not always the case. It's doing it the first time is not always easy. There's not a lot of offensive experience. I feel like, if there's problems on defense, well, hell, there's 4 different guys. It could be defensive coordinators, that are on staff right now, from Jerry Gray, from the head man himself, from the actual defensive coordinator. If things are kind of going off the rails a little bit, where do you turn on the offensive side of the ball? I guess that's a little bit of a question, but you're banking on talent. I'll take talent over experience every time. What I do like though is experienced talent. I've came up with the phrase, at least it was new to me, was just because a person has a job doesn't mean they're the best at it. You see these lifers that they're not any good. They've just been there forever. So I'll bank on talent, on young talent every time. And that's what you're hoping you get with Zach Robinson. Matthew Petey fan, he says, let's go ATL, rise up. Bernard's here as well. You might know the answer to this one. I actually don't. First cuts are June 1st, right? What do they go down to, 85 or something? I don't even know.
I think so. Yep, I think it goes down to 85. It's a small cut at first, but we should be getting some news here soon. Probably nothing too earth-shattering, but there's always 1 or 2 from teams where it's like, oh, that's a pretty big salary that they're dumping there. So we'll see.
Yeah, and if you're here, you probably know, if you're watching a Falcons podcast on May 29th, you probably will recognize the names of 86, 87, 88, 89, and 90 who end up getting cut. But they're just not guys that you write up the news. They sign this guy, but we don't, and we'll tell you flat, we don't expect these guys to be on the roster. They're part of the 90 because you have 90. It helps with practices. I mean, they don't do friendlies. You don't do scrimmages because of the sport's too dangerous, but it helps with evaluations and having 2 full first and second teams, third teams out there working, etc. Jordan Brown's here. Says, good morning, Scott. How about them Aints and those past due Bills? I know they lost an edge rusher, but I think he was a reserve guy. What else has happened with the Saints here recently?
I think he's just talking about the crazy dead cap that they have and how they keep kicking the can. I guess they're kind of built, like the American economy, right? The inflation and the debt just keeps getting bigger and bigger. But hey, you're taking the present gains and worry about the future when the future happens. And as long as
there actually are some consequences too. You can look at. I saw we had an article on All Falcons about Caden Ellis, and someone came in and posted, a Saints fan on the YouTube side where I posted it said, always taking our scraps. Yeah, that's what happened, Saints fans. It wouldn't have anything to do with bad cap management and having to lose guys like David Onyemata and Caden Ellis who can play, who are good freaking players. I promise you'd rather have them than not. Jay Gribben and the Falcons know all about there is reality in the salary cap. Jay Gribben, good to see you, Jay. Speaking of Pope alum, TJ Yates, another Pope alum. The 3 of us with Jay and TJ and me, we're a little bit older than TJ. He says, good morning, Scott. Good morning to you. And he had a question that came in just a little bit after that. He says, Paddock or Heinicke at the number 3 quarterback. Now, TJ is talking up Paddock a little bit, said he looked good at rookie minicamp and all of these things. And I think if he looks serviceable, Nick, I think he ends up getting the QB3 job. I don't think Heinicke is a QB3. I don't think he wants to be a QB3. And I don't want him to be QB2 on this team. I don't want him to take a single snap away from Michael Penix. Nothing against Heinicke, But if I'm taking a quarterback, number 8 overall, with the idea of let's let him marinate for a year or two, well, I want him marinating, taking reps. I don't want him just sitting there holding a clipboard. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, I guess the one thing that Heinicke has going for him is, to my knowledge, not much of an injury history. And not that Penix has been hurt recently, but you do have Cousins coming off a severe injury. And Paddock, undrafted free agent, 5'11", 5'10" quarterback is not somebody that you want to be really banking on. Now, granted, all the way down to quarterback 3, season's probably already off the rails at that point anyway. So does that matter that much? I mean, really, to me, I agree with you about the reps, but how much money can you save? Can you save, a good chunk of change keeping moving on from Heinicke in comparison? That's really what it comes down to. But if you're talking quarterback 3, especially given what you invested in 1 and 2.
They saved a lot of it already when they now they call it a restructure, which is basically a cut and a re-sign. Listen, if you don't take a pay cut, we're going to cut you. That's what for the back end of the roster guys, or that's what a restructure is. That's what Taylor Heinicke was. So they've already saved most of that money. And they actually ended up taking another $1 million in guarantees. Now, why would they do that? Maybe they can trade. Maybe they can get a trade. It's such a quarterback desperate league. Maybe they can pull off a pick swap. Maybe they can get a 5th rounder or something like that. But I don't want, no offense to Taylor Heinicke, I don't want Taylor Heinicke to be the 3rd string on this team. I want you being a backup with a chance to play somewhere else. And I don't want it to be where they just drafted a rookie, took a quarterback number 8 overall. I want him number 2. I want him taking every rep that Kirk Cousins doesn't.
Yeah.
And Taylor Heinicke, he's better than that. He's better than just, a coach in the stands, clipboard holding number 3 guy. Go compete somewhere. I that's what I want, Jay.
Yeah, I'd be curious if the market even is for him right now, given how many quarterbacks came in the draft and just how many kind of mid-level 2 or 3 kind of quarterbacks are out there. But he's really buried in Atlanta. Obviously, I'm surprised they even did anything with his contract to begin with to keep him, Scott. I know it happened.
They did that before. They did, before the draft. They spent a lot of money on quarterback before they went and drafted Michael Penix. But we've been through all of that. End up only costing them another $1 million, which is like 0.33% of the salary cap. Yeah. So they did already cut and re-sign. They have taken the cap savings that he was due. And Jordan coming in saying that they were behind on their stadium payments. The Saints were. So there's a phrase that goes around a lot in international football that's a pretty big insult, because it's cutthroat capitalist in international football. It's whoever has the most money buys the best players and you win. And it's poverty franchise. So I'm not calling the Saints a poverty franchise, but if you wanted to insult them in an international way, that would be the way you might do it right now.
Man, that's crazy. That's actually pretty shocking to me. I mean, I know there's teams that are operating very close to their margins, like the Chiefs. I mean, I don't know if you remember, the Chiefs were like threatening to, we might move if you don't help us fund a new stadium or anything. I know the Raiders too, even though Mark Davis is wealthy, not a wealthy organization, but I didn't know the Saints were in that poverty franchise discussion as well. So that's, I mean, if you're talking to somebody who's covering the Broncos, that's about all we have here over the last few seasons is, at least we have wealthy owners.
But at least we have money. Well, great. Is that helping you on your ticket prices? No,
not yet.
No, it hasn't. Helps us on our ticket prices. Michael Ronquillo says, "Good morning, Scott and Nick on the Falcons podcast." Michael, thank you for being here. We certainly appreciate it. Terry Clark is here. He says, "Morning, gentlemen, in Falcons country. Looking forward to plunging the Steelers into doubt early. I think they go soul searching after a Falcons week 1 loss." That's a great point. It is the season of overreaction. The Falcons lose week 1 with a new coach, new quarterback, all of these things against, a playoff team. You're like, okay, how we look? Did they do okay? The rest of the schedule opens up. There's room for improvement. The Steelers, though, there's already a lot of divisiveness on Mike Tomlin now. It's like, okay, great. He's a 9-8 coach. Awesome. We're this Pittsburgh freaking Steelers. We want better than just not having losing seasons. You got, we brought in new quarterbacks. We brought in new offensive coordinator. It's time to win, or Mike Tomlin's seat's probably getting a little toasty right now. So Terry, that's a great point. There's going to be definitely a lot more pressure on the Pittsburgh Steelers in week 1 than there will be on the Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that the Steelers now, obviously, Tomlin's one of the best coaches in football, and they are a blue blood standard program in all of football. But you have some interesting storylines the first 2 weeks for them that could maybe take things a little bit out of football and make it personal. You have Arthur Smith, obviously, with the Falcons, and then Russell Wilson with the Broncos. Now, I trust Tomlin and especially the defense to be okay there, but early season, kind of getting the offense going. Don't really respect the weapons of the Steelers as well. I mean, you have some highlights there, but Pickens is a little bit erratic on and off the field. So that's
look at their quarterback situation when we start talking about erratic wide receiver play. But I get it. Pickens has some attitude problems.
And outside of that, I mean, Freiermuth is a good tight end, but there's not many tight ends who are needle movers, so to speak. He's just a nice guy to have. And outside of that, gosh, just really haven't gotten it done on that side of the ball. There was a bit there where everybody's like, oh, man, look at how good the Steelers are drafting at wide receivers. But their depth chart is not standing out right now for that position. So we'll see what happens with them. But, man, I'm really hoping for our sakes that we can send the Steelers off to 0-2 to start the season. Van Jefferson out there, Roman Wilson they drafted. Those are their top 3 with Pickens. So it's a questionable room without a doubt.
Victor, good to see you. Says Sub Scott, love that picture. You and the little one. That's awesome. Coach is coming in with a super chat. Thank you, Coach. He says, miss you guys. It's like with the emoji kind of blends in with the yellow. I was like, what is that? Is that some sort of Ukrainian flag or what, what or Sweden? He's happy Wednesday, fam. Happy Wednesday to you as well. Looking forward to a weekend. Hopefully the rain stays away. Had a weekend off from travel baseball, but looking forward to getting back out there. We'll be up at Milton Pro Player Park this weekend. I'm looking forward to getting back out there. So happy Wednesday to you and appreciate the support for sure. Thank you, sir. Let me go back to that, jump back down. And John was talking about, he asked when we were talking about, not Surtain, Simmons, Justin Simmons. Mm-hmm. Do you think they would hire a 31-year-old cornerback? Simmons is a safety. And yes, I think at 31, I think he would be a major upgrade in the room. And I think he would be just a perfect round peg, round hole partner on the back end of that defense with Jesse Bates. Just, he's so smooth in coverage. His anticipation is good. He's not known as a big hitter, but he's big and he can fill the run just fine. He's smart. He's a ball hawk. What's he lead the league in interceptions since he's come into the NFL? That it'd be good. You'd be hard pressed throwing the ball over the middle of the field with those two, from the 10 to 20 range with those two up there. And as playmakers, they do so much else. I would love Justin Simmons next to Jesse Bates with the Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah, I mean, that's one area that could probably make the biggest difference on anyone's roster right now, considering what's still out there. The safety market's still a little stagnant, but we're moving through OTAs now. It's getting to a point, right, where he probably needs to get integrated somewhere. So we'll see, but he can definitely help out the questions the Falcons have at edge and at cornerback, making another spot of that spine of the defense a little stronger. And again, it's something we said before the draft, where this is a very much a win now situation for the Falcons, given bringing in Kirk Cousins, the state of the NFC South, and maybe, while the draft was very much 2 to 3 years down the line, you can go back to free agency, signing guys off the market and lining up for the immediacy and competing this season.
Mark Schrader's out in Texas says, good morning, Scott. He's got the coffee emojis. We'll drink to that. I believe in Empire is here. He says, hello, Scott and Nick. Hope your guys' weekend was great. To you as well. And this is John Higgins. Says, morning, brother Kennedy. Says, how are you this morning? I had a fraternity brother named John Higgins. I had to look. I'm like, is that my fraternity? I was like, no, this is a different brother, John Higgins. So thank you, brother Kennedy. Appreciate you saying hello. How are you this morning? Doing good. Doing really well. And again, like I said, this is like therapy for me. I just it's a rush of endorphins. So I love being here with y'all in the morning, and it's flattering that y'all spend time with us to talk Falcons football. So we're sitting here chatting some Falcons. Roderick Cook, we're talking about the lefty spin. He says, yeah, Scott, it's different. Been watching the old Vick reels. It's flat and quick. Now, Michael Vick was different. That his arm, he doesn't get nearly enough credit. And y'all have heard me say this before. If you're new, welcome. But if you're one of the OGs or OLs around here, the Michael Vick does not get enough credit for his arm talent. He didn't get drafted number 1 overall because he ran a 4.3. He could absolutely flick his wrist and the ball would just go. He had an amazing, his accuracy is what held him back, from being able to hit consistently. But as far as his ability to get velocity on the ball with very little effort was one of the best there's ever been.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you don't just go number 1 overall, especially in the era that he did. What was it? 2000. He was on Madden 2004. So it must've been 2001, 2002. Definitely predating when I was truly paying attention to the draft, but it's not just the athleticism, of course. It's the easy cheese. That guy could spin the football, kind of just exploded out of his hand. The processing, the middle of the field stuff, the playing in the pocket and the accuracy that, never really became elite. I thought it was a little bit better there down the stretch that he had that really good, 2010? That 1 year with the Eagles where he was awesome with Andy Reid. That was after he got out from his things that he did, right? But he was an unbelievable talent, and you're right. I mean, he was such a playmaker as an athlete that people almost forget how good the arm talent was.
Yeah, it's just, again, and I heard someone say afterward, I've been in this discussion recently, and I got to meet Michael Vick, name dropping here, in a different business venture I was looking into. But evidently, I don't know him well enough to say, hey, Mike, hold up your arm. I guess he had like wrists like this, like just these, most people's hands, they're wider than the wrists. I think his went straight down. Not me. I got, big hands, skinny wrists, looks like a tennis racket. So Michael's here, and Michael Ranquillo is hot. And Michael is coming in hot. He says, Scott and Nick, fire, good to see you. Steve Kennedy, we know that guy. Again, I said we got to get you a new picture. That one in his lap is looking down on him now, and probably wider too. So that one's been a few years. And talking about the receivers and the weapons, and we can expand on this a little bit because there's a good point. Jordan says, let's not act like Drake London can't be that guy. Contested catch after contested catch. He needed a quarterback to get him touchdowns and have more respect. Yeah. The difference is I think Drake London's a phenomenal receiver. I think Kyle Pitts is a phenomenal talent, but it's not as proven. I mean, you're talking about Jordan Jefferson. If he ends up Jamar Chase, trying to get someone to be Jordan Jefferson, we talk generational, and you know how that word just rankles me because it gets thrown around like 10 times a year. Well, that's not generational. That's like bi-weekly at this point. Justin Jefferson is the guy of this era. He is of this generation. He's the number 1 guy of this generation for me, and he is generational because he's the guy. Drake London doesn't have to be that good to be really, really good.
I would argue there's only one person that maybe you could throw into that conversation of generational. That'd be Tyreek Hill, right?
Yeah.
What he's done at multiple spots now, not had the injuries of Jefferson as well, a little bit more longevity. But he's the one that I think, if just to push back for the conversation's sake, I think Tyreek Hill is probably worth at least mentioning in that vein because he's been pretty unbelievable.
Yeah, and I think of Tyreek Hill as I don't think of him as a wide receiver, really.
He is, though. I mean,
I just think of him as playmaker.
Yeah,
football player. Like Justin Jefferson, to me, if I'm thinking wide receiver, I just think he's got more tools in the bag if I have to line him up in one spot, like an old traditional wide receiver, where Tyreek Hill's a wild card. He's just playmaker. And I absolutely agree with you as far as impact on the game or whatnot. I'll put Tyreek Hill in that conversation too. He's kind of in his own box for me. He's just different. He's again, just a little bit different for me.
It's almost a little bit to me like we were just talking about Michael Vick, the arm talent being, forgotten about because of how good an athlete he is. Tyreek Hill's so fast that we kind of forget how he's built like a running back and actually a pretty good route runner and strong at the catch point for what he is as well. I mean, a lot of guys that are that fast have a hard time changing direction or can get moved off a little bit. Not Hill. People always like, oh, he's the next Tyreek Hill. Well, good luck with that. There has only been one, and we'll see if anybody else can be like that. But that's the only one that also comes to mind if you were talking about generational.
Yeah. Again, he's in his own. The cheat is in his own box for me. But I agree with you. That's a great point. Yeah. It's like, oh yeah, he's thought of as a one-trick pony because he's so fast. No. If he were slower, he'd still be really good because of the things that he can do.
Yep.
Quentin Caldwell says, "Good morning, everyone. Good morning, right back at you. Good to see you." Stephen B says, "Saints never going to win a cap space bowl." Yeah, that's for sure. And going back, Floyd's talking about Paddock is quarterback 3, and Rusty. The Saints haven't been paying their bills. It's been reported for the last week. I think I saw it, and just my thought process when I saw that headline is this will work itself out. I don't care. I just kind of flushed it. So we'll see. I'm more concerned with salary cap moves. And the one I do remember again is they announced that they lost one of their edge rushers. I can't pronounce his name to an AC, I think it was an ACL, but it was a knee injury or an Achilles that was probably going to be, a season ender.
It was Tano Passigno, I believe, was the name there. I don't know if you remember him. He kind of made a lot of stir coming out of the Senior Bowl just because he was built so freakishly. But I think drafted by the Chiefs in the second round out of Villanueva of all places, I think.
Villanova.
Excuse me.
Villanueva was a basketball player, I think.
Yes, I think you're right. Yeah. Villanova, the Wildcats out there, Philly. But Tano Passigno, tears his Achilles. He's kind of that, I guess we can call it classic player for the Saints, where he's kind of a defensive tackle 5 technique body type that's playing a lot of 7 technique edge because they're more of a pocket crunching team. But tears his Achilles, out for the year. I know we hate the Saints in here, but I'm never pulling for injuries for any of these guys. So that's a bummer for him. And we'll see what happens. I mean, that team definitely on the I don't know. I don't really respect a lot of the NFC South, Scott. It kind of got me in trouble last year with the Bucks, but I expect that's a team that's pretty close to maybe having an implosion here. I mean, there was some issues last year with Derek Carr. Allen is very much on the hot seat there. It's an older roster as well. The offensive line has been terrible. I'm not buying stock on the Saints.
So where on the Falcons timeline would you put the Saints right now? Arthur Smith's first year, 2021, with the aging roster and the old quarterback. The difference is one losing season. I think Dennis Allen's going to be coaching somewhere else next year. And then it needs a reset. The Saints need to just get done with this. We're always trying to eke by on our credit cards and with hefty cash payments on restructuring guys. Man, just hit the reset button, go back to being the Aints for 2-3 years and reset. They absolutely, we saw the Falcons do it. And this is the fruits of the labors coming into last year was supposed to be better than it was. And then this year, and we'll see if it worked. They did that. They reset the roster. They bit the bullet on Julio Jones, on Matt Ryan, on Deion Jones, and we're able to come out of this with some really well-spent free agency money with Jesse Bates, with Calais Campbell. Bud Dupree did a job. Caden Ellis, David Onyemata. Now Kirk Cousins. You've got the money to fill in gaps. I think the Falcons have done a good job of rebuilding the roster. Now let's see now we need to see the results. We didn't see them last year, and it cost Desmond Ridder his job. It cost Arthur Smith his job.
I mean, we need to have the prophecy fulfilled, right? We need Arch Manning in the Saints to complete what Archie Manning could not do. But yeah, you're right. That's a team that, they went out, they spent on Chase Young this offseason. They still are holding on to Marshawn Lattimore, but they're old. They're just an old roster. Demario Davis, Tyrann Mathieu, Jordan Cameron's still there.
Old and expensive is a hard way to go through sports.
Yeah, I just don't really understand exactly what they are doing as a team. I'm with you. It's easy for us to say in our, seats here, we're hanging out talking football, being like, "Oh, just be terrible for 3 years." Not a lot of teams, owners, coaches have the stomach for that, because it's very much a game by game, year by year business, and things. If you don't have results, you'll get
It's up
fired.
to ownership at that point.
Yep. Yep.
You gotta get a general manager you trust, and it's up to ownership to say, enough. I'm
Yep.
not sending this guy another $40 million so that he's got a $90 million cap hit with four void years in 2027. Enough. Enough is enough. Keith comes in. Good to see you, Keith. He says, appreciate the stars, breaking the ice for us over on Facebook. He says, hey, Scott and Nick. Scott, in the scouting world, what would you be doing this time of year? For high school to college is where I spent most of my time in the scouting world. I'd be finding probably 7-on-7s this weekend, or finishing up the Nike camp tour is what I would be doing. The Nike camps were every weekend, basically March, April, May. So 3 months of the year I was on the road every weekend with the Nike camps. So if they were going this weekend, otherwise I might take one weekend off, because the June camp circuit, then I'd start going to 7-on-7s and college camps and watching to see who was going there. But it's a year-round process. So, now I'm going to watch travel baseball on the weekends. I'm going to be hella informed about the class of 2027 and 2028 for Major League Baseball prospects. I'll have seen all of them by the time they come out. I've been watching all those guys. I think I told y'all, Dexter McLeon Jr., 6'4", 185 pounds, son of Dexter McLeon, who played in the NFL for a while. He hit 94 miles an hour. He's 14. Hit 94 off the mound. And it's like an easy, Tommy John. But he's so athletic. It looks easy. Pow, 94. He hasn't quite harnessed it in yet, but he's 14 years old and he's got a 94 mile an hour fastball. So I'm always scouting, dude. Always. It's just right now it's baseball. It's baseball coming up.
I mean, if you're talking the NFL circuit, the guys will still be kind of making the inroads here, maybe stopping in facilities to see some practice. Scouts a lot of times, bringing donuts, trying to be the first one in there in those rooms to, help out with the coaching staff and make some connections in there. And they're just, right now asking the coaches, who's standing out? How's this guy progressed? Do we still have issues with academics or in the film room with this player because we like the talent, or a transfer came in, a guy that we were following? Hey, our Northern scout really liked him, but now he's transferred to, I don't know, Ole Miss. Is that somebody that he's standing out here? Like we have had comments coming into this process. So these guys are always working. I hope the scouts this time of year, May is typically a little bit more down for them than June, as things are starting to ramp back up. Also, these guys are getting ready to start combing over we talked about the roster cuts earlier. 5 guys going to be released. Well, guess who's going to be combing over the tape there, seeing if there's anybody worth grabbing? These the professional scouts as well at this side. So it is a thankless job. I know it's a lot of people love the NFL draft and whatnot, but being one of the grunge scouts down there, that's a hard life and a hard job, and pretty thankless. A lot of time on the road. It's not the most fun.
That was always one of my favorites, Nick. If these guys were any good at what they do, they'd be working for a team. My ass. I'd work for a quarter of the money, 10 times the hours, and not have any record. I enjoy the media side of things. I enjoy talking to y'all. I enjoy finding and blabbing about it. Yeah, I don't. You do that if you've got aspirations of moving up and on. Which if you didn't play, you weren't going to. That was about as far as you were going to get. So Brown Cow comes in. He says Falcons can't sniff the playoffs in 6 years and counting. That's changing this year, Brown Cow. It's changing. Braves lose Acuna for the year. That sucks. Atlanta United keeps losing games. The Hawks have the silliest front offices in sports. Look at what Luka is doing. Yeah, that was who'd they get? Was that part of the Trae Young trade? Not even sure. I haven't watched the Hawks since the turn of the century, really. They were one of my favorite teams. If you were an 80s kid like me, the Hawks were freaking good. So watch them a lot. But Nick, this is what it feels like to be an Atlanta fan. And the Hawks win the lottery for the first time in their existence, as far as I can remember, at least in Atlanta. I don't remember them ever having the number 1 overall pick. Dominique was pretty close, and I think they took Marvin Williams with like a 2 or a 3, but I don't remember them having number 1 overall. As a lifelong Atlanta sports person, my first reaction was, oh, must be a crappy draft. I mean, yes, we're cynical. So, the Atlanta United won a championship, and they've been punished for it ever since. But the last time Acuna went down, the Braves won it all. So the Braves won it all. It sucks for Ronald Acuna. Remember him, Nick, getting hell for signing that 10-year contract and how they were taking advantage of this poor young black kid? Well, he's missed 2 seasons since then with knee injuries. You know what? If we're going to be dogging kids for taking $100 million, something's wrong with us. Something's wrong with us. So hope he's doing much better. It sucks for one of the most exciting players in sports, period.
Yeah.
Greg Elrod, good question here. Is it time to have a live show at an Atlanta eatery during an open to the public training camp day? Love to meet everyone. Fly Nick in. Yes, it is. It's time to do. This community has gotten big enough that I don't think it would just be me and Nick in the parking lot with the pigeons if we did something like that, or if we got together at a Taco Mac or something and did something like that, did a live show. We might have to make it an evening one though, Nick. I don't know how many people we'd get at 9 a.m.
I mean, I don't know if they're anything like a Big Ten country out there. You'd have people out there at 5 a.m, kegs and eggs, mimosas for everyone. I don't know, but that'd be fun. We'd have to really talk about the schedule and working it out, because the newborn here, and only so many hours it might be in and out in that kind of situation. But I've never been to Georgia, and
I was saying, in one more year you're traveling and the whole family comes.
Yeah. I mean, we might bring the little guy to the Denver meet and greet this season, especially if my family makes the journey there. It's only a 12-hour drive for the Midwesterners, which is nothing if you're from the Midwest, really. Easier said when you don't have a little baby, but we'll see.
12 hours is Cleveland, Ohio.
Yeah.
So from where we are, it was 8 to Cincinnati, 10 to Columbus, 12 to Akron, where we drove back to for Christmas every year when I was a kid.
Let me tell you, that drive from Eastern Iowa to Denver, though, rough. It's one road, it's 80, but like West Iowa through Nebraska through East Colorado, man, it's God bless. If you're lucky, you get to see the Sandhill Cranes. That's about all I can say. That's all I can say.
Appreciate you, Greg. Thank you for the support. We need to do something. We need to do something like that. This community has grown leaps and bounds in the last year, and it'd be fun to definitely meet all of y'all. 10 Cam, he says they're still huffing fumes talking about the Saints off that Super Bowl 15 years ago. At least they've got one. Has there been a team that has blatantly tanked like it was really their intention? Yeah, they have. I mean, who was it? Was it the Cardinals that, cut one of their starters so they didn't have to pay him a bonus?
Yeah, it was
2 years ago.
Oh gosh, it was the Trayvon Mullen, cornerback.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So yes, and that's what was the pearl clutching about the Miami Dolphins saying their owner. Now, if he's discriminating against someone racially, that's a whole different conversation. But part of that suit, that Brian Flores suit, was like saying that we want you to lose these games. Well, duh. When you incentivize people to lose, guess what they're gonna do?
They're gonna lose.
We're gonna reward you for losing, but don't try and lose. Come on now. That's really naive, stupid, even. So yes, there have been teams. The most recent, most obvious one I can think of was the one we just said, the Arizona Cardinals, who if he hit a playing time bonus or something like that, he was a starter. He was our best defensive back, or right in there, and they cut him. Well, we don't want that to happen. We're not trying to win. So that was about as obvious as it gets.
And you can tank from a front office team building perspective without that being what the coaches and the players are doing. I mean, you can go into seasons like where you're obviously underarmed, undermanned, and those guys, the coaches are still going to cook with what they have, right? It's the general manager is the one who goes and gets the ingredients. The coaching staff's the cook in the kitchen. Maybe you don't have premium ingredients one season, you're working on a budget, and the results may not be as good. The coach is not trying to tank. The players are not trying to tank. But from a front office perspective, you can have a soft tank, so to speak. And you call it what you want, rebuild. Oh, we still see ourselves as competitors. Sometimes things happen, you might catch some lightning in a bottle. But I mean, I can think of 2 recent examples here where we've had some soft tanks from a front office perspective. In my opinion, at least, they might argue differently. But in the Texans and the Lions, that's looking pretty good right now. I mean, heck, even Keith brings up another good comment here. The tank for Tua. Tua really hasn't been a superstar there, but that team turned around, and they were 3rd overall, pretty terrible there for a number of years, and now they've been playoffs 2 years in a row with some turnaround there. So yeah, that's I do think there is actually some validity to it. It's going to take more than one great draft pick to turn a team around, at least in the short term, but I think there is some validity to it still.
Mad Mike Sports Podcast. Good to see you, Mad Mike. Been a guest on his show. He says, hey, what's good, brothers? Continued blessings. Right back at you, sir. Hope you're doing well. There's some talk about a meet and greet. We'll figure something out. Maybe we do we'll figure something out. Maybe not this year, but maybe we do something in the spring around the draft. We'll see. That would be a lot of fun. We live potted it anyway. We might as well do something like that. Get a sponsor or something. So we'll figure something like that out. There was a point you were making, and then it just slipped because I'm old. I get in trouble, Nick, for interrupting you a lot. Well deserved. I get it when people say, quit interrupting him. You're right. But if I don't, I forget what I was going to say, and he'll remember. He's smarter than I am. So on that note, I think there's some Alex Anthropoulos talk in here. They love, Double A has done a phenomenal job with the Braves. Absolutely phenomenal. And was it the Hawks and the Braves had when Turner owned them both, they had some crossover there when Ted Turner owned them both. Stan Kasten was like president of both operations. And I think as who was it? Terry said, yeah, but Stan was a disaster too. Yeah, there was a lot of disaster going on back in those days, but the Hawks were good. They were fun to watch. Let me see here. I thought there was one more thing I wanted to hit. Yeah, Terry talking about Stan Kasten. They're talking about the draft. I think we are just about to get out of here. And let's hit Leaf, and then we'll be just about out of here. He says, morning, everyone. Hope you're having a good start to summer. The QBs are looking nice, and no pads at least. But that's still, when you're talking about someone coming off an injury, that matters. That's about the only time I care. OTAs. I'm like, it's a glorified install. I don't care. But this matters. Yes, I do care. I do want to see Kirk Cousins throw the ball. I'm not necessarily as interested in Michael Penix because I'm going to see more watching his last couple of games at Washington than I'm going to learn about seeing what he does, throwing in shorts and a T-shirt to Kyle Pitts. Now, it looks nice. It's fun, but I'm not going to learn anything there. I am going to learn something watching Kirk Cousins out there for sure. How does he look coming off an injury? So, that's a big one for us. We're getting into the summertime. That's for sure. We're talking about the dumbest moments in Atlanta sports history. There's a lot to choose from, but the Detroit Pistons, this was in the 80s. They offered John Koncak. It was at the time was a huge contract, and the Hawks matched it when they absolutely shouldn't have. And he ended up getting the name Johnny Contract after that one, and it kind of hampered them. And I think they probably would have even gotten draft picks back. That's a close one. There's a lot of dumb ones out there. I was not a big fan of trading Marquise Grissom and David Justice for Kenny Lofton, who came here and pouted, but they used the idea that they had to use that money to re-sign Greg Maddux and Tom Glavine, which they did. That one pissed me off. I remember exactly where I was in 97 when that trade came through. We're off the rails. It's time to go. If you want to consider continue the conversation, Nick and I are going to hop over to youtube.com/milehighhuddle. Otherwise, we will be back next Monday on time. We're back on schedule. 2 more months, and then we'll go back to 3 days a week. We'll get Fridays in now, but for the summer, it's just going to be Monday and Wednesday. Want to say a special thank you to our Super Chat superstars like Keith, like Greg, Edward, and Coach. You help keep the lights on, help keep my forehead nice and shiny. Y'all have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next time.
Peace.